Ilhan Omar is in the headlines once again, the representative from Minnesota. Many of the top cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, they have been, since the early 1990s, invaded by Somali refugees. This relates back to the 1980 Refugee Act signed by Jimmy Carter. And in the late 80s, early 90s, because of the Somalian Civil War, there have been many Somalians that have utilized that Refugee Act to come to Minneapolis, come to St. Paul, Minnesota. And now we're seeing such an uptick in Somalians, they are voting their own people in, along with naive Caucasian liberals. And this is happening. We're seeing it with Muslims in Dearborn, and there's some crazy stuff on that. But now you've got Omar, who obviously does not like the United States, does not like what we stand for, does not like our history, does not believe that any Somalians coming in have to assimilate. And by the way, that thought process comes from the white liberals that tell other white people, you must assimilate to them. They're bringing their culture, they're bringing their language. You ask them to assimilate, that's racist. That's modern colonization. And so now you've got Omar in a church saying that, quote, I do believe those of you interested in rewriting this hateful man's, in reference to Charlie Kirk's, history are full of shit. And so she is an elected representative within the United States government. Obviously, people are very angry. It's an extremely raw time. We saw AOC deliver a statement earlier today inside of Congress saying that she wasn't sorry, basically, what happened to Kirk. He was hateful, he was vile. And it's almost like they're saying he got what he deserved. And that's a lot of liberal sentiment. And we have to understand, it's not just from these crazy lunatic Antifa 20-year-old kids with no life experience, which is who some people will try and blame this on. This is from the elected representatives. This is from a lot of normie, middle-class people with normal jobs. That's who believes this stuff. And this is a bigger problem just in general when it comes to the migration we've seen into random cities. We know in Ohio this has happened with Haitians, where the city will just be loaded up with Haitians, Springfield, and it's like, long term, is this really going to be good for the city? These people, they are like 85 IQ, they don't speak English. Is this really going to be good long term? And of course, this is done to stimulate the economy. Believe it or not, capitalism loves low skill labor because these people will come in, they'll work for less, they will lower the wages, and it'll hurt American citizens, but it'll help the short-term GDP and the short-term economy. And now you've got all these people in the country, you don't know what to do with them, and they're procreating. And it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. And it's gotten so bad now where there's so many of these immigrants within, because, it's like the second wave immigration. If you've got a lot of Somalians in one city or even one area, like one block or one district of Minneapolis, it's like a bullhorn back home in Somalia. Come here, come to this part. This is where we're at. This is where we're staked out. Use the Refugee Act. And so they take advantage of all of these outdated acts to where the reason I call them outdated is because of the ridiculous demographic shift. At a certain threshold, there needs to be an immediate cutoff. It's a very, very simple concept. Once we reach a certain threshold of refugees we take in, there has to be a cutoff. We just keep taking them in. And so you get stuff like this where immigrants are voting their own immigrants into political power in the United States. And this woman, of course, has a horrible statement to say about Charlie Kirk. Again, she does not like the United States of America. She's been elected into office by other people that do not like the United States of America, and also woefully naive. And I call them naive because that's what they are, because they're the ones, and I'm talking about white liberals, they're the ones that say race doesn't matter. But these Somalians, these people are tribal. Muslims in Dearborn, now there's like Islamic prayers going on at 5 a.m. in the morning. I mean, this is happening in American cities. And so she's going to come out and she's going to tell us Charlie Kirk is a bad man and blah, blah, blah. And you've also got this, people talking about it. Steven Crowder coming in with a scoop talking about how Ilhan Omar, and this has been rumored for years, potentially married her brother. And there's a lot of conflicting reports. You ask the AI, you ask Grok, they'll say, oh, it's not true or it's unconfirmed. And Snopes said it's unconfirmed. But there are some issues and some discrepancies on her marriage certificate in terms of her getting American citizenship and trying to stay in the country. I believe that's what it's in. That's what it pertains to. And so maybe that is true. I don't know. I know Trump said yesterday about Omar, because she's been a big agitant in the past days about besmirching Kirk's name. Trump has said he would like to see Omar deported from the United States. But to me, it's an even bigger issue to where these immigrant cohorts move into certain cities and they just take over the districts. And again, it's like ignorant, naive white liberals and the immigrants voting for another immigrant who doesn't want to assimilate, who doesn't tell her people to assimilate. She's out there praising Somalia today again. And it's like the blind leading the blind when it comes to these cities. There is no United States, according to a lot of these people. I mean, because what is the country? Why is this woman allowed to be an elected official? She does not like the United States. She has no clue about the U.S.'s history. And she gets elected by other people that don't want to assimilate into our culture. They say we don't have any culture. So they just want to use the United States and squeeze all of the money that they can out of the country and use us, like other people say, as an economic zone. And of course, the capitalists, unfortunately, love this because it is cheap labor and it hurts the overall market. And that's why you'll get Bernie Sanders and people like me and other Republicans agreeing when it comes to things like H-1Bs, because that is pure capitalist manipulation. And I'm not saying capitalism is bad. I think every economic system is imperfect. There's different aspects of all the systems within the United States. I mean, there is some socialist aspects, but it is the best system, I agree. But it is also important to understand it thrives off of this low-skill immigrant labor, because these people are coming from a place of desperation, and they say, we can make $12? An American citizen, they're not going to work for $12. There's a little bit higher, they're coming from a significantly lower standard of living. And that's how the wages get cut significantly from these immigrants coming in. And so, to me, it's an even bigger issue whether or not Omar gets deported. You've got this now mayoral race in Minneapolis between the guy that cried for like 15 minutes at George Floyd's casket and I don't know if maybe a Haitian who I believe cheated during the process. He might be disqualified. I'm not sure. The entire thing is a complete mess, but it's interesting how they call it first wave and second wave. The first wave comes in and they're like, we got this area, come on in. And so it happened in Dearborn. It happened here in Minneapolis. And where is the stop to it? Where is the, okay, we've got enough now. We have to keep some, because they don't believe in that. The entire country, they think, is a melting pot. They think it's a globalist cesspool. Anyone could come in and leave. But the point is the way in which the United States, all of the institutions, which now have DEI, and you go to Harvard, you go to Yale, they got rid of some of that, but it still lingers in terms of per class, and the graduating classes have to be a certain amount minority. And honestly, I mean, you take a look at the Asians will be like 95%. I understand that, but that's also from Asians coming in through the student visas. But the country, the United States, in terms of its overall military might and its economic might, it was built by a populace that was 90% Caucasian up until 1965. Now, you could say these immigrants coming in may help short-term slightly in terms of GDP growth. Long-term, it's going to be a big problem. It's going to be, in terms of livability, standard of living, we already see it in the major cities and the demographical shifts there. And you look at the demographical shifts and you compare that to the standard of living and the quality of life And it is a direct correlation. And so this is an even bigger problem than Ilhan Omar spouting off about being extremely. This woman just does not like the country. She does not like the United States. She got elected hating the United States. She has no loyalty or allegiance to the United States, yet she's in a position of power. Seems like there might be a few problems in terms of our electoral system if a woman like this gets power, that clearly doesn't like our country, that has no plans on assimilating. You ask these people to assimilate, they say you're racist. How dare you? You must assimilate to them. You must assimilate to their language. You must let them have their culture. And so this is the real big issue that we're dealing with. And you've also got this. This is typical with Dearborn, Michigan, which has just been, I hear, just taken over. Muslim mayor. Think about this. Muslim mayor in London, England, that Trump didn't want to meet. His recent visit the past few days to the UK, he said, I didn't want to meet him. Khan is his name. Muslim mayor in London, England. Muslim mayor in New York City. Ugandan, who wasn't born in the United States if Mandani wins. The West may have an immigration problem. Two of the most powerful cities within the West, London, England, and New York City, New York. And it's Mandani and Khan. I mean, that really tells the picture right there. But look at this. Muslim mayor of Dearborn, Michigan just told a Christian resident he was not welcome in the town. And the reason is because the Christian said, maybe it's not a good idea to, what were they, naming a street after a Hamas supporter. A supporter of Hamas and Hezbollah was having a street named after them by their Islamic mayor. This is a city in, not the Middle East, the United States. So this is insane, and I don't think it really surprises anyone with how bad Dearborn is, but understand, a Christian says at a local council meeting, sir, this is not a good idea. We don't agree with this as Christians. He says, you're not welcome here. This is Michigan. Yeah, this is Michigan, all right. And so they all move into the same areas. They got more power that way, and they take over districts and even seemingly cities with this Islamic mayor saying, well, you're a Christian and you don't want this Hamas and Hezbollah supporter in the city. You're not welcome here. It's not Pakistan. It's Michigan. And so it's an illustration for how ridiculous it's all gotten. But you need to be careful, and there's just no guardrails to this stuff. They get the primary immigration and the secondary, and it just keeps coming and coming and coming, and they form these cohorts in districts and in cities, and they become powerful, and they elect each other because there is tribalism there. And the problem is, a lot of times you've got these major cities, the white people that are going to be there, they're normally super liberal already, so they're more inclined. They actually have bias against whites themselves, so they're also more inclined to go with a Mandani or another minority. So it's like this crazy compound we're seeing, these dynamics in these big cities. And that's one of the interesting things with Trump and the idea of National Guard deployment, which is there's no other way to reach these cities. The amount of influx in terms of the immigration, the demographics, they will never be conservative. The only thing you can hope would be an Eric Adams, who's a liberal that's kind of a hard ass on crime. And that clearly didn't work out. Oh, you know what? They elected Eric Adams. Now we're going to get possibly a communist or at least a socialist. But Mandani is quoted as saying is, yes, you need socialism before. Mandani says if you switch, and this is known, you switch from capitalism to get to communism, you have to go to socialism first. I don't think really any of it's going to happen. I don't think Mandani has the power as a mayor to really enact. It's probably going to end up being a watered down version of socialism that stifles the economy because a lot of rich people are going to leave and you're going to be dealing with issues in terms of a lack of tax revenue. And it's probably going to turn New York City farther to the right. Understand the people electing Mandani. These are 20-year-old white college kids. That was the major voter bloc. Blacks voted against Mandani. Hispanics voted against him as well. They voted for Cuomo in the primary. So understand that's who. I mean, how crazy is that when you think about that? But you've also got this Trump talking about Antifa. There's been a lot of questions in regards to how Trump does this in terms of Antifa, the fact that they don't have an actual leader. I mean, obviously, we've seen Antifa. They have these meetings. They go out. They organize. I think the point is you keep it really vague in regards to Antifa, and they say, well, technically, you can't label a domestic organization a terrorist group or a terror. I think you can label them like a terror cell or something minor, to where Trump has said the point is, he said, well, we're going to be going after a lot of leftist organizations. And you want to know something interesting? It came out a few days ago and it really isn't talked about, but the Democrats utilized this strategy back in 2020. After January 6th, they investigated many, I believe it was over 90 total Republican organizations, including Turning Point USA. That's part of the reason the story came out. I think it was called Arctic Frost or something. That was the operation. That was the epic title of this liberal operation to try and investigate all of these conservative organizations. Why were they able to do this? Well, because of January 6th. Why is Donald Trump going to be able to cut off all of this leftist network funding? Well, because of the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the subsequent celebrations. So you want to talk about irony in terms of what the Democrats did, to where they investigate all of the Republican organizations because of January 6th. And it's really a guise. They did it because they wanted to obviously find stuff within these organizations, whether it's relevant to January 6th or not, it doesn't matter. And it's kind of like these funding apparatuses. Where does Antifa get their money? Why do they go out and we see them marching? Obviously, their money comes from somewhere. And so I think that's the important thing, and that's what Trump understands. And it's not even necessarily Antifa. They can be the useful idiots that allow the investigation into the bigger people that are actually funding a lot of these leftist organizations, cut off the funding, the entire thing splinters. That's the idea. So I think that's what Trump is probably thinking, and that's why Trump has hinted several times that there is going to be investigations that are wide-ranging and vague, meaning there will be a lot of leftist organizations and liberal networks investigated. Just like the Democrats did in 2020 after January 6th. And so we'll see what ends up happening in terms of this. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.